Because the book of Hebrews lays out for us the superiority of Jesus. The whole purpose of the book was to convince a Jewish audience, that's why it's called Hebrews, to convince a Jewish audience that Jesus is superior to their heritage. These are people who trace their bloodline to Abraham. They have Moses as the head of their, for lack of a better term, their church, Israel. And the writer of Hebrews comes along and says, you've received Christ, don't go back. Christ is better than temples, he's better than lambs, he's better than priests, he's better than bloodshed, he's better than your religion. He's better than your heritage, he's better than tracing your genealogy. The whole book of Hebrews is that attempt by the author to get his audience to not go back. And we talked about how difficult that was, because when you're raised around a religion, you and I, most everybody in this room was raised in some form of religion, or at least was around it. It's hard to shake what you've done as part of your heritage. And the author of Hebrews is saying your heritage isn't good enough. You're going to have to come into something new creation reality. So what we did last month, without rehashing it, is we told you why, and we used Hebrews 8:13, where a new covenant has made the first one obsolete, ready to vanish away. We talked about how he did that at the cross. But if you'll remember, we started earlier in the chapter, and I want to read the 6th and 7th verses. I think we read verse 7 last month. Hebrews chapter 8, verse 6. But now he has obtained a more excellent ministry, inasmuch as he is also mediator of a better covenant, which was established on better promises. Who's the he in this verse? Take a shot. Jesus, good one. He has obtained. It's all right. We'll work through it. Context. We didn't give you any context. It just threw you right in the middle of a chapter. And that's a good example for why we need to go back and reread some verses sometimes. Find out who we're talking about. In this situation, the he, New King James cheats a little bit, capitalizes the H. That helps you out. So it must be somebody special. He gets his pronoun gets a capital letter on it. It doesn't happen every day. But he is a mediator of a more excellent ministry. I want you to consider that the author of Hebrews is laying out in front of you the fact that Jesus is now the ultimate priest. You don't need a high priest in Jerusalem. You have Christ as the ultimate priest. What makes him ultimate is the fact that he has an eternal priesthood. You never have to worry about him dying. Israel was always judged based upon the efficiency and effectiveness of their high priest. Good guy, good things happened. Bad guy, bad things happened. Okay, that was how Israel functioned. If we had a good leader, we had good things. If we had a bad leader, we had bad things. So when the author of Hebrews comes along and says Christ is an eternal priest, he's bragging. He's bragging, saying, guess what? If you believe in Jesus, you're in good shape because he's not going anywhere. That's what the author of Hebrews is trying to say. But with all of that said, see, I don't have to convince you Jesus is good. I don't have to convince you Jesus is great. And I certainly don't have to convince you he's better than your neighbor or better than you. Jesus is the ultimate. That's easy for us. We're not Hebrews living in the first century. But with all of that described, reread that verse. He has obtained a more excellent ministry because he's a better guy. He has obtained a more excellent ministry because he's sinless. He has obtained a more excellent ministry because he's virgin born. He has obtained a more excellent ministry because he died on a cross. I'm throwing in all the stuff that if I were to go around the room and say, what makes Jesus better? That's what we would say. He's virgin birth. He died on a cross. He raised from the dead. He never sinned. He did good. He healed sick people. He raised the dead. All correct answers, right? Hebrews doesn't use any of them. When he establishes to his audience that Jesus is a better priest, he doesn't mention the virgin birth, the death, the resurrection, the healings, the miracles, or the sinlessness. Now this is important, and it sounds minor, but it's a great place to start tonight. Because see, none of that stuff does anything for you.
Right. So true.
Okay? I mean, I'm not saying the cross of the resurrection doesn't do anything for us, but it's not we didn't go there and do that. We didn't raise. We didn't raise the dead and heal the sick. We know we're not sinless. We can't even identify with that part of Jesus. But look at what made him better. Middle of verse 6. He obtained a more excellent ministry inasmuch or because why? Because he mediates a better covenant with better promises. Jesus is not a better priest because he was a better guy. Jesus is not a better priest because he was sinless. Jesus is a better priest because he has better equipment to work with. According to this text, he's a better priest because the covenant's better and the promises are better. So, and they're not taking anything away from Christ's morality or who he was as a man or who he was as God wrapped in human flesh, but the author of Hebrews goes a whole different route than I would have went. I know me. I would have tried to convince you how great Jesus is based upon his morality, his miracles, his healings. But he says, forget all that, because what you need to know is that Christ is better at this because he has better equipment. There's a better covenant and there's better promises, and then there's this verse.